She was a virgin, innocent, and believed that love only existed in old books. When the millionaire appeared, shirtless, coming out of the sauna, she felt something she had never felt before. If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave your comment telling us where you are listening from. The March heat in Miami was merciless, sticky like melted honey on the skin, and Olivia felt every drop of sweat running down her back as she carried a folder of documents through the air-conditioned corridors of the Helios resort. The contrast between the hell outside and the artificial paradise of air conditioning made her shiver, but it wasn't just the cold. It was the constant feeling of not belonging to that world of Italian marble, crystal chandeliers, and staff who whispered in fluent English. At 22, Olivia carried on her face the rustic beauty of someone who grew up among orange groves in rural Florida, raised by her grandmother Constance after her parents died in an accident when she was only 8 years old. Grandma Constance was a woman of few smiles and many silences, who taught her granddaughter to work hard, speak softly, and never dream too high. "Girl, the place for people like us is on the ground, not in the clouds," she would always say, while embroidering tablecloths by candlelight to sell at the market. But Olivia had dreamed. She had studied until her eyes bled, got a full scholarship to the state university, graduated in hotel management with honors, and when the internship vacancy at Helios appeared, she felt that fate was finally giving her a chance. The resort was legendary throughout Florida, 5 stars carved on the Palm Beach coast, frequented by international celebrities, influential politicians, and businessmen who moved billions as if moving chess pieces. On that stuffy late afternoon, she shouldn't have been in that corridor. The delivery was for the administrative sector, but the corridors of Helios were a labyrinth of glass and marble that confused even veteran employees. Olivia turned left instead of right, passed through 2 carved mahogany doors, and found herself in an area she had never explored before. The silence there was different, denser, almost sacred. The air smelled of eucalyptus and something indefinable, expensive and masculine. It was then that she heard the sound of the door opening. Marcus Blackwood emerged from the private sauna like a vision that Olivia would never be able to forget. At 36, he was the very definition of masculine power incarnate. Broad shoulders, abs defined by daily swimming, skin golden from the Caribbean sun where he spent his winters. A white towel hung negligently around his hips, and beads of sweat ran down his bare chest like liquid pearls. But it was his eyes that paralyzed her. Grey like a storm at sea, they fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel as if she were being stripped layer by layer. He didn't say a word. He just observed her with that inscrutable expression that she would learn to fear and desire in equal measure. Olivia felt the air escape from her lungs, her heart racing like a runaway horse, her hands trembling as she held the folder of documents that suddenly weighed a ton. It wasn't just physical attraction, although it was impossible to deny the brutal magnetism of that man. It was something more primitive, more dangerous, as if a part of her, always dormant, awakened only to recognize her predator. "You're lost," he finally said, his deep, velvety voice carrying an indefinable accent, the fruit of a childhood divided between London, where he had studied, and America, where he had built his empire. It wasn't a question. It was a statement that seemed to refer to much more than her physical location in the resort. Sorry, Mr. Blackwood," Olivia stammered, feeling the blood rise to her cheeks. "I was looking for the administrative sector to deliver these documents. I got lost in the corridors." A ghost of a smile played on his lips but didn't reach his eyes. "Olivia," he said, and the name sounded different in his voice, as if he already knew it for a long time. "The new intern, Parker, told me about you." How did he know her name? Richard Parker was the general manager, her direct supervisor, but Olivia couldn't imagine that the founder of the resort would bother to know who the interns were. Marcus Blackwood was an urban legend within the hotel itself, the man who had built an empire from nothing, who spoke 7 languages, who had transformed an abandoned strip of beach into the most exclusive resort on the East Coast. It was said that he rarely appeared in common areas, preferring to manage everything from his suite on the top floor or from his offices in New York and Miami. "Yes, sir," she replied, trying to recover the professional composure she had learned from books. I started last week. From rural Florida, he continued, still studying her with those penetrating eyes. Lost your parents at a young age, raised by your grandmother, first in the family to reach university. Olivia's blood froze. How did he know all this? Her resume was basic, without personal details beyond the essentials. The feeling of being dissected increased, now mixed with growing discomfort. How did you... I know many things about the people who work for me, he interrupted, taking a step in her direction. The movement was predatory, calculated, and Olivia realized she was trapped between him and the glass wall behind her. Especially when these people have interesting characteristics. What did that mean? Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine, but couldn't determine if it was fear or excitement. There was something in the way he looked at her that made her feel simultaneously desired and threatened. I should go, she murmured, clutching the folder to her chest like a shield. The documents need to be delivered before 6. Of course, Marcus agreed, but didn't move away. Just one thing, Olivia. This corridor is restricted. The sauna area and private apartments are not accessible to resort staff. I'm sure it was. Just a mistake this time. There was a subtle threat in the words, wrapped in velvet but sharp as a blade. Olivia nodded quickly, looked away from that bare torso that dangerously distracted her, and began to move away. But when she was already at the door, his voice stopped her once more. Olivia. She turned, reluctantly. Welcome to Helios. The way he said it, with an intimacy that shouldn't exist, with knowledge he shouldn't have, echoed in Olivia's mind all the way back. When she finally delivered the documents to the administrative sector, her hands were still trembling slightly, and she couldn't get the image of that man emerging from the sauna like a pagan god, powerful and dangerous, out of her head. That night, in her simple little room at Mrs. Martha's boarding house where she lived in Palm Beach, Olivia found herself thinking about him while showering, about the large hands that could envelop her entirely, the deep voice that seemed to know, secrets about herself that she didn't know. For the first time in her life, she experienced a type of desire she couldn't name, hot, urgent, frightening. And deep down, a voice whispered that that encounter hadn't been a coincidence. The next morning, Olivia woke up with a strange feeling in her stomach, as if she had done something wrong even though she knew she hadn't. The encounter with Marcus Blackwood seemed unreal in the daylight, perhaps just a feverish dream caused by the fatigue of the first days of work. But when she arrived at the resort and Richard Parker called her into his office, she knew it had all been too real. Olivia, there's been a change in your allocation, Parker said without beating around the bush, nervously shuffling papers on his desk. He was a middle-aged bald man who had always treated her with the distant cordiality reserved for interns. Now he seemed uncomfortable, as if he were carrying out orders that he didn't fully understand. You'll be transferred to the central administrative sector. But sir, I've barely started in reception. I thought I would stay there for at least a month to learn superior orders, he cut her off, avoiding her gaze. You'll work directly with management reports, occupancy analyses, cost control. It's quite an opportunity for an intern. Olivia felt her heart race. Central administrative sector meant proximity to the directorate. It meant the glass-enclosed office on the 12th floor, from where you could see the entire stretch of Palm Beach. It meant working a few meters from the man she couldn't get out of her head. You start today, Parker continued, handing her a new badge and a folder with instructions. Secretary Mary Jo will guide you on your duties. An hour later, Olivia found herself in front of a polished mahogany desk, surrounded by glass walls that offered a panoramic view of the Atlantic Ocean. The office was a sanctuary of efficiency and discreet luxury, imported furniture, abstract paintings that probably cost more than her grandmother's annual salary, state-of-the-art technology. And at the center of it all, occupying an even larger office separated only by glass partitions, was him. Marcus worked with concentration, his navy blue dress shirt contrasting with his tanned skin, his dark hair slightly disheveled, as if he ran his hands through it when thinking. Golden-framed glasses rested on his aquiline nose as he analyzed reports, making notes with a pen that certainly cost more than Olivia's monthly budget. There was something hypnotic about the way he moved, each gesture calculated, precise, charged, with a natural authority that made everyone around walk more slowly, speak in a lower tone. During the first few hours, he didn't look in her direction once. Olivia began to question whether there really was any connection in their encounter the day before, or if it was just her overheated imagination. She focused on work, analyzing occupancy spreadsheets, comparing revenue data from the last 3 quarters, trying to decipher the complex codes that governed the operation of that hotel empire. It was when she was organizing files in a drawer that she found the folder marked Personal History. She shouldn't open it, she knew that. But curiosity was stronger. Inside, old photographs of the resort under construction, newspaper clippings about the opening, supplier contracts from the early years. And then, lost among the documents, a photograph that made her blood freeze. A young woman with wavy brown hair, dark eyes, shy smile. She wore a simple blue dress and held a bouquet of wildflowers. On the back, a handwritten note. Olivia, 1998. The resemblance was disturbing. Not identical, but too close to be coincidence. The same delicate bone structure, the same reserved expression, even the shape of the lips. Found something interesting? The deep voice behind her made Olivia jump, dropping some papers on the floor. Marcus was right behind her, so close that she could feel the heat emanating from his body, the masculine cologne mixed with something that smelled like sea and fine wood. Sorry, I was organizing the files as Mary Jo asked and decided to snoop through personal documents, he completed, but didn't seem irritated. There was something more complex in his expression, a mixture of curiosity and something she couldn't identify. Sadness? Nostalgia? Olivia quickly bent down to pick up the papers, feeling her face burning with shame. It wasn't intentional, I swear. The folder was loosely closed and— Leave it, Marcus said, crouching down as well. For a moment they were very close on the floor, her hands brushing against his as they gathered the scattered documents. The touch was electric, sending waves of heat up Olivia's arm. Who do you think that woman in the photograph is? The question caught her off guard. He wasn't angry that she had seen the photo. He was curious about her reaction. I don't know, she answered honestly, still crouched, her eyes fixed on his. But she looks like me. Yes, Marcus agreed, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. She looks very much like you. They rose in sync, but he didn't move away. He continued there, invading her personal space in a way that should be uncomfortable, but strangely made Olivia feel alive in a way she had never experienced before. Did she work here? Olivia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She did, he confirmed, taking the photograph from her hands. For a moment, their fingers touched again, and Olivia felt an electric current run through her entire body. A long time ago. What happened to her? Marcus studied her for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. She left, said she had found something better elsewhere. There was pain in his voice, carefully controlled but still perceptible. And something else, a bitterness that spoke of old unhealed wounds. You loved her, Olivia said before she could stop herself. It wasn't a question. His eyes darkened. Love is a dangerous word in this place, Olivia, especially when spoken by someone who looks so much like a ghost. The rest of the day passed in an almost unbearable tension. Marcus returned to his activities, but Olivia felt the weight of his gaze on her constantly. Every time she raised her eyes from the computer screen, he was watching. Not in an obvious way, he was too subtle for that. But she felt it, like an animal feels the presence of the predator, even without seeing it. During lunch, she ate alone in the staff cafeteria, hearing fragments of conversations about the boss. They say he never got over his ex-fiancée, one of the maids whispered, that she disappeared suddenly and he was never the same. Nonsense, another countered. A man like that doesn't get shaken up over a woman. He's the one who sent her away when he got bored. But Olivia had seen the expression on his face when he held the photograph. He had loved, yes, and perhaps still loved. When she returned to the office, she found a white rose on her desk. No card, no explanation, just the perfect flower still, with drops of dew, exhaling a sweet perfume that contrasted with the sterility of the corporate environment. Mary Jo, the veteran secretary, passed by the desk and smiled knowingly. "Mr. Blackwood had it brought from the garden," she said softly. "First time in 5 years he's sent flowers to anyone." Olivia held the rose, feeling the soft petals between her fingers. It was a romantic gesture, but there was something disturbing about the choice: white rose, purity, innocence, or farewell. When she left work that night, it was almost 10 o'clock. The resort had emptied, with only security personnel and night shift staff remaining. Olivia walked through the parking lot toward the bus stop when she heard footsteps behind her. "Olivia." She turned around. Marcus walked toward her, still wearing his dress shirt, but with the sleeves rolled up, the tie loosened. Under the yellowish light of the lampposts, he seemed even more imposing, more dangerous. "Mr. Blackwood, did something happen?" "Where do you live?" he asked, ignoring her question. "At Mrs. Martha's boarding house in Palm Beach. Why?" "It's far to go by bus at this hour." It wasn't an observation, it was a statement loaded with intention. "I'll take you." "No need, I always return by bus." That wasn't a request, Olivia. There are moments in life when you make a decision that will change everything that comes after. Olivia knew with a visceral certainty that getting into that car would be crossing a line from which she could not return. But when Marcus opened the door of the black Porsche for her, when their eyes met under the moonlight, she got in. The interior of the Porsche smelled of Italian leather and the masculine cologne that had already become too familiar to Olivia. The engine purred softly as they left the resort behind, following the coastal road illuminated only by the full moon reflected on the ocean. The silence between them was dense, charged with a tension that made Olivia feel each beat of her own heart. Marcus drove with the same precision with which he did everything, economical movements secure, totally in control. But there was something different about him now, away from the eyes of the employees and the formality of the corporate environment. He seemed more human and, paradoxically, more dangerous. "Thank you for the rose," Olivia finally said, breaking the silence that was beginning to become unbearable. "Did you like it?" he asked, without taking his eyes off the road. "It was unexpected." "You'll find that I do many unexpected things." There was a promise in those words that made Olivia's stomach contract. "Tell me about your grandmother." The sudden change of subject caught her off guard. "Grandma Constance, why do you want to know?" Curiosity. He slowed down, as if wanting to prolong that journey. "What was it like growing up with her?" Olivia hesitated. Talking about her grandmother meant talking about poverty, about nights without electricity, about a universe that had nothing in common with his world. But something in Marcus's voice encouraged her to continue. "She was silent. She worked a lot, talked little. She taught me that life was hard and that I needed to be even harder to survive." Olivia looked out the window, seeing the lights of Palm Beach approaching. "She never talked about the past, about my parents, about what it was like before I arrived. It was as if life had started on the day I went to live with her." "Some people prefer to bury the past," Marcus said, and there was something too personal in that comment. "And others get stuck in it," Olivia replied, looking directly at him. Marcus turned his face to look at her for a moment, his grey eyes shining under the lamplight. "Careful, Olivia, you're starting to seem dangerously perceptive. Is that bad?" "Depends on what you intend to do with that perception." They arrived at Mrs. Martha's boarding house, a simple 2-story house painted blue, with wooden verandas and plants hanging from planters. It was a completely different world from Helios, honest in its simplicity, without pretensions or luxuries. Olivia expected Marcus to make some disdainful comment, but he just observed the house with a thoughtful expression. "Is your grandmother still alive?" he asked when she was about to get out of the car. "She died last year, that's why I came to Miami to do the internship. There was nothing holding me back in the countryside anymore." "I'm sorry." The sincerity in his voice surprised her. She lived well, worked until the end. I think that's how she wanted it. And did she leave anything for you? Inheritance, documents, photographs? It was a strange question, but Olivia answered without thinking too much. Just some clothes and an old trunk with letters and papers. I didn't even have time to go through everything properly before I moved. Marcus nodded slowly, as if that information was important somehow. If you need anything, anything at all, look for me, no matter the time. Why are you being so kind to me? Olivia asked, her hand already on the door handle. He took time to answer, his fingers drumming on the leather steering wheel. Maybe because you remind me that not everything in this world is calculated and cold, or maybe because I look like her. His eyes darkened. Be careful not to look too much like her. During the following days, Olivia immersed herself in work, trying to decipher the meaning of that conversation. Marcus had returned to being professional, distant, but she felt his attention like a physical presence. He knew exactly where she was all the time, appeared in places where she needed to go, created opportunities for them to be alone for a few minutes. It was during one of these occasions that she discovered more about the first Olivia. She was organizing old files in the storage room when she found a forgotten box behind some shelves. Inside, more photographs, old receipts, and a folder titled Employees 1998-2000. Her heart raced when she saw the name on the first document, Olivia Adams, receptionist. The personal file revealed disturbing details. The first Olivia was also from rural Florida. She had also lost her parents young. She had also been raised by her grandmother. The similarities were so many that they became impossible, unless they weren't a coincidence. Found something interesting again. This time Olivia wasn't startled by his voice behind her. She was beginning to recognize his presence even before seeing him. You knew, she said, turning with the file in her hands. You knew who I was from the first day. Marcus closed the storage room door behind him, locking them in that small, stuffy space. The proximity was too intense. She could see the lines of expression around his eyes, feel the heat emanating from his body. Knew what exactly? That I'm not just similar to her. I'm her family, aren't I? Very intelligent. He came closer, resting a hand on the shelf beside Olivia's head, cornering her. And what do you intend to do with that discovery? Discover the truth, why she really left, what happened between you two. Some truths are too dangerous to be discovered, and some lies are too dangerous to be maintained. Marcus smiled. Then, the first genuine smile she had seen from him. It was devastating, completely transforming his expression, revealing a beauty that went beyond physical appearance. It was the smile of a man who recognized a worthy adversary. You have no idea what you're messing with, Olivia. Then explain it to me. Instead of answering, he raised his free hand and touched her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheek with a delicacy that contrasted with the intensity of the moment. Olivia felt the air escape from her lungs, her entire body reacting to that simple touch as if it were fire. Your grandmother never told you about the time she worked here? He asked, his voice hoarse. She worked at Helios for 2 years, as a maid, then as a housekeeper. She was very young, very beautiful. His fingers moved down to Olivia's neck, tracing her accelerated pulse, and very naive. What happened to her? She fell in love with the wrong man. Olivia's heart stopped for a moment. My grandfather worked here too. Your grandfather, Marcus pronounced the words with bitter irony. You still don't understand, do you? Your grandmother never married. Your mother was the illegitimate daughter of a resort guest, a rich, powerful man, who used her and then discarded her when he learned of the pregnancy. Olivia's world collapsed. All the history she knew about her family, all the assumptions she had made, everything was a lie. How do you know all this? Because I know who that man was. Marcus came even closer, his lips almost touching her ear. It was my father. The shock was so intense that Olivia had to lean on the shelf to avoid falling. That means that we're half siblings, no. Your mother and the first Olivia weren't the same person. He backed away slightly to look into her eyes. They were cousins, daughters of sisters. Your grandmother, Constance, and the first Olivia's grandmother were sisters who lost contact years before. You're making this up. I'm telling the truth. A truth that I discovered too late. There was genuine pain in his voice now. When I fell in love with her, when I thought I had finally found someone real amid all the falsity of my world, I discovered that she was part of the same story that destroyed her family a generation before. Olivia felt as if she was sinking. And her. Did she know? She found out around the same time I did, and she couldn't bear it. She couldn't bear being part of a cycle, a repetition. She said we couldn't be together because we were products of the same violence that my father had caused to her family. So she really left. She left, he confirmed, but there was something in the way he said it that made Olivia suspect there was more to the story. And now you're here. Another Olivia from the same family in the same place with the same man. You brought me here on purpose. I didn't bring you. You came on your own. But when I saw you in that corridor, when I knew your name, he touched her face again more intensely this time, I thought it was a second chance, an opportunity to fix what went wrong, or to repeat the same mistakes. Maybe. He leaned in, and before Olivia could process what was happening, kissed her. The kiss was devastating. Not gentle, not hesitant. It was pure hunger, accumulated desperation, years of solitude being poured into that moment. Olivia should have stepped back, should have thought, should have resisted. But her body reacted instinctively, her arms wrapping around his neck, her mouth opening to receive him. When they separated, both were breathing with difficulty. "This is madness," Olivia whispered. "It is," he agreed, "and it's just the beginning." In the days that followed that kiss in the storage room, Olivia felt as if she were walking on crystal, each step calculated, each breath measured, afraid that a false move could break the fragile reality that was building between her and Marcus. In the office, he maintained the impeccable professional mask, but there was an invisible electric current connecting them that any more attentive observer could notice. Mary Jo, the veteran secretary, began to cast curious glances between the two. During breakfast in the staff cafeteria, Olivia heard whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when she approached. Helios Resort was a small town in itself, and secrets were rare currency in that environment. It was on a rainy Thursday, when the resort was emptier due to the storm lashing the Florida coast, that everything changed. Olivia worked late, organizing quarterly reports that needed to be sent to international investors when she realized she was alone on the floor. Even the security guards seemed to have retreated to areas more protected from the storm. "Still here?" Marcus's voice emerged from the shadows like a caress. He had taken off his jacket, loosened his tie, and there was something different in his posture, less controlled, closer to the man who had kissed her with such hunger days before. Reports needed to be ready today," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And with the rain, I preferred to wait a bit before leaving." Sensible. He approached her desk, and Olivia noticed he was holding 2 glasses of red wine. "I thought you might need company." "Mr. Blackwood, I don't drink during work." "Marcus," he corrected her, offering one of the glasses, "and technically your shift ended 2 hours ago." The wine was full-bodied, probably expensive, and warmed her chest in a way that had nothing to do with just the alcohol. They drank in silence for a few moments, watching the rain beat against the office windows, the lightning illuminating the rough sea outside. "Did you research your family after what we talked about?" Marcus finally asked. "I tried. I called some people from the countryside who knew my grandmother, but no one knew much about it. Or they didn't want to talk." Olivia swirled the wine in the glass, observing the dark liquid. "I found only one interesting detail." "Which one?" "My grandmother kept money under the mattress, a lot of money, more than someone who lived by making embroidery and selling at the market should have." She looked directly into his eyes. "Where did that money come from, Marcus?" He sighed, running his free hand through his hair in a gesture that she was beginning to recognize as a sign that he was about to reveal something significant. My father may have been a scoundrel, but he wasn't completely heartless. When he learned that your grandmother was pregnant, he didn't publicly acknowledge her, but he ensured that she would never be in need. He sent money every month, discreetly, through a lawyer. For how long? Until she died. His eyes fixed on hers. The last deposit was made 3 days before you sent your resume to Helios. A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. You're implying that... I'm saying that when I saw your name on the list of internship candidates, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. It was as if destiny was offering me a second chance to correct what my father had wronged, or to repeat the same mistakes. Maybe. He finished the wine and set the glass on the table. But there's a fundamental difference. Which one? I'm not my father, and you're not your grandmother. The intensity in his voice made the air denser. A lightning bolt lit up the sky, followed by a thunder that seemed to shake the building's structures, and in that moment of white and violent light, Marcus leaned in and kissed her again. This time it was different, slower, more deliberate, as if he were memorizing every detail of that moment. His hands tangled in her hair, his fingers tracing lines of fire along her neck, her shoulders. Olivia felt herself melting, all rationality dissolving in the heat of that embrace. When they separated, both were panting. "This is dangerous," she whispered, but didn't move away. "I know." He caressed her face with a delicacy that contrasted with the intensity of the kiss. "But I can't stop. Neither can I." And it was true. Despite all the logic screaming in her head that this situation was a ticking time bomb, despite knowing that getting involved with the boss was professionally suicidal, despite all the family and historical complications, Olivia couldn't resist the magnetic attraction she felt for that man. "Come with me," he said, taking her hand. "Where to?" "A place where we can talk without interruptions." He guided her through the corridors of the resort, now plunged into twilight due to the storm. They passed through areas she had never explored, a private game room, a library with books in various languages, a private cinema. Finally, they stopped in front of a carved, wooden door that he opened with a special key. "My private apartment," he explained. The space was surprisingly cozy for someone who projected such professional coldness. Soft leather furniture, a lit fireplace that spread a golden light throughout. The environment, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a privileged view of the stormy ocean. On the walls, photographs that told the story of the resort since its construction, and some more personal ones, Marcus at different ages, always alone or in formal business situations. "Do you live here?" she asked, still processing the intimacy of that invitation. "When I'm at Helios, I have houses in New York, Miami, London, but this has always been my refuge." There was a low table with other documents spread out, and Olivia couldn't help but notice that among them were old photographs, some of the first Olivia, others of people she didn't recognize. "You still love her," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus followed her gaze to the photographs. "I loved her, but what I felt for her was too complicated to be just love." Complicated how? Obsession, guilt, a sick need to repair the mistakes of the past. He turned to face her. "With you, it's different." "How can you be sure?" "Because with her I wanted to erase the past. With you I want to build a future." The words hit her like a punch in the stomach. There was too much sincerity in them, too much vulnerability for someone who projected so much control. "Marcus, I don't even really know who you are. This world, this life, all of this is completely strange to me." "Then let me show you who I am." He approached again, but this time he didn't kiss her. Instead, he took her hands and brought them to his face, making her touch him as if she were a blind person getting to know a new texture. "I'm a man who built an empire trying to prove to a dead father that I was better than him, who has spent the last 5 years punishing himself for not being able to save the woman he loved, who believed he was condemned to repeat the sins of the previous generation until you entered that wrong corridor." Olivia's fingers traced the lines of the masculine face, memorizing every detail. There were small, almost imperceptible scars that spoke of a life that hadn't been just privilege and ease. "You scare me," she confessed. "Why?" "Because when I'm near you, I forget who I am. I forget where I came from, what I planned for my life. It's as if you had the power to erase and recreate me." "I would never do that." He held her face between his hands. "Your strength, your authenticity, your ability to see through the masks that everyone wears here. That's what fascinates me about you. I wouldn't try to change that for anything in the world." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside, that apartment there was a bubble of warmth and intimacy that made Olivia forget everything else. When Marcus pulled her to the leather sofa in front of the fireplace, when he wrapped her in his arms and began to kiss her neck with a reverent hunger, she knew she had definitely crossed the line that separated her old life from the new one. They didn't make love that night. They just talked until dawn. She nestled against his chest, listening to the heartbeats she was beginning to know better than her own. He told her about his lonely childhood, about the pressure of carrying the Blackwood name, about the nightmares that still visited him some nights. And when the sun finally broke through the storm clouds, illuminating the calm sea, Olivia knew there was no turning back. She was lost in that man in a way that both terrified and completed her at the same time. The following weeks passed like a feverish dream. During the day, Olivia and Marcus maintained the professional facade. She, the dedicated intern, he, the distant and demanding CEO. But at night, when the resort emptied and the shadows lengthened along the marble corridors, they met in hidden corners like lovers conspiring against the world. There was an urgency in each encounter, as if both knew that it was temporary, too fragile to last. Marcus took her to secret places in the resort, a private terrace on the top floor from where you could see the entire stretch of the Florida coast, a natural grotto carved into the rocks where the sound of the sea muffled any conversation, the winter garden where rare orchids bloomed under artificial light. In each of these places, he touched her as if she were made of crystal and fire at the same time. His hands explored her body with an almost religious reverence, but there was always an underlying intensity that made her tremble. They hadn't given themselves completely yet. There was an invisible barrier that neither dared to cross, as if they knew that making love would definitely seal a fate that they didn't yet have the courage to assume. "You're different, Mary," Joe commented one morning, observing Olivia with perceptive eyes. "More luminous, as if something important had happened." Olivia felt the heat rise to her face. "Different how?" "A woman recognizes when another has discovered the power she has over a man." The secretary smiled with complicity. "I just hope you know what you're getting into, girl." "What are you talking about?" Mary Jo looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "This place has long memories, Olivia, and some wounds never heal properly." Before she could ask what that meant, Marcus appeared at the office door. "Olivia, I need you to prepare. The June occupancy reports, meeting with investors in an hour." His voice was neutral, professional, but when their eyes met, she saw the familiar warmth light up in them for a fraction of a second. It was a dangerous game they were playing, and both knew it. During the meeting, Olivia sat at the back of the conference room, taking notes while Marcus presented numbers and projections to a group of suited men who asked questions in English and German. He was in his element, commanding everyone's attention, answering the most complex questions with natural ease, radiating the authority he had built over the years. It was then that she noticed one of the investors observing her more closely than normal. He was an older man with grey hair and penetrating blue eyes who made notes in a leather notebook while openly studying her. After the meeting, while the others headed for lunch, the man approached Olivia. "Excuse the intrusion," he said. "I'm maybe Keith Weber, minority partner of Helios. Could you grant me a few minutes?" Olivia looked toward Marcus, who was talking with other investors on the opposite side of the room. Something in Keith's expression made her uncomfortable, but it would be unwise to refuse. "Of course, Mr. Weber." He led her to a side veranda, away from curious ears. The sea stretched infinitely before them, but Olivia could barely appreciate the view focused on the tension emanating from the man beside her. "You look extraordinarily like someone I knew a few years ago," Keith began, lighting an expensive cigar. "A young woman who worked here as a receptionist. Olivia Adams." Olivia's blood froze. "You knew her?" "Knew her well. Very well." There was something sinister in his smile. She was a charming girl, until she started asking too many questions, meddling in matters she shouldn't. What kind of questions? Keith studied her for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. About how certain businesses were conducted at the resort, about special clients who received differentiated treatment, about activities that happened in the private rooms of the East Wing. Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. The East Wing was the most exclusive sector of the resort, where the presidential suites and Marcus's private apartments were located. She had never questioned what happened there, assuming they were just luxury accommodations for VIP guests. "What happened there?" "Oh, my dear," Keith laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "You really don't know, do you? Marcus didn't tell you about the true Blackwood family business?" Before she could answer, the familiar voice cut through the air like a blade. "Keith." Marcus approached with controlled steps, but Olivia could see the tension in every line of his body. "What interesting conversation are you having?" "Just getting to know your new protégé," Keith replied, the smile not leaving his lips. "She reminds me so much of someone we knew." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Olivia, could you excuse us? Keith and I have private matters to discuss." It was clearly an order, not a request. Olivia hesitated, looking between the two men who stared at each other like predators disputing territory. "Actually," Keith said, throwing the cigar over the veranda, "I think our young friend should stay. After all, this concerns her too." "Keith." Marcus's voice was a dangerous warning. "Come on, Marcus. She has the right to know the truth about this place, about what really happened to her predecessor." Keith turned to Olivia. "Did you know that the first Olivia didn't simply leave, as your lover there likes to say?" The world seemed to stop. Olivia felt the ground move under her feet. "What do you mean?" "She discovered things she shouldn't have discovered, saw things she shouldn't have seen. And when she threatened to expose certain irregularities, well, let's say her departure was more permanent than everyone imagines." "Enough." Marcus stepped forward, his voice charged with threat. "You're crossing a dangerous line, Keith." Hi?" The German smiled maliciously. "Or am I just trying to prevent history from repeating itself? Because, frankly, the similarities are too disturbing to be ignored." Olivia felt as if she were sinking in quicksand. "Marcus, what is he talking about?" But before he could answer, Keith continued, relentless. "Helios is not just a resort, my dear. It's a facade, a very sophisticated operation that involves very special clients with very particular needs. Politicians who need safe places for discreet meetings. Businessmen who make deals that can't appear in the newspapers. People who pay very well for absolute privacy." "That's not illegal," Marcus said, but there was too much tension in his voice. "No, it isn't. But what some of these clients do in their private rooms, well, that's another story." Keith fixed his eyes on Olivia. "And when the first Olivia discovered about the recordings, about the photographs, about how certain information was used to influence important decisions, she became a problem." "Recordings." Olivia could barely pronounce the word. "Oh. Yes, every room, every suite, every private corner of this resort is monitored. Marcus has compromising material on half of the most influential politicians and businessmen in the country. That's how he keeps his businesses flourishing, how he gets impossible contracts, how he makes competitors disappear from the market." The horror of the revelation hit Olivia like a punch. "You're lying." "Am I?" Keith looked at Marcus with challenge. "Why don't you tell her about the files in the reinforced room, about the backup copies kept in 3 different countries, about how you used the information collected here to destroy the lives of people who opposed you?" "Olivia, don't listen." Marcus tried to approach her, but she instinctively backed away. The betrayal in her eyes hit him like a stab. And the first Olivia discovered all this, she whispered, the pieces of the puzzle fitting together in a terrible way. Discovered and threatened to make it all public. Said she couldn't stay with a man who used blackmail and extortion as business tools. Keith lit another cigar, clearly satisfied with the chaos he had created. So Marcus solved the problem definitively. "Where is she?" Olivia asked, her voice coming out as a whisper. Marcus's silence was more revealing than any confession. "Ah," Keith sighed dramatically. "That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Where is Olivia Adams? Her death certificate was never found, you know, nor her body. Very convenient." Olivia felt the world collapse around her. The man she was falling in love with, the man who touched her with such reverence, who made her feel special and desired, was a monster, a murderer. And she was following exactly the same steps as the first Olivia. "I need to get out of here," she murmured, moving away from both men. "Olivia, wait." Marcus tried to follow her, but Keith blocked his path. "Let her go, my friend. She needs to process all this, decide if she wants to follow in the footsteps of her predecessor, or if she's smarter than she was." The last thing Olivia heard before running into the resort was Keith's voice, loaded with cruel satisfaction. "Welcome to Helios, girls. I hope you enjoy your stay." Olivia ran through the corridors of Helios like the devil was at her heels, her heart beating so loudly she could hear it echoing off the marble walls. Keith's revelations ricocheted in her mind like stray bullets. Secret recordings, blackmail, extortion, and the first Olivia gone forever after discovering the truth. She reached her small office and began gathering her things with trembling hands. She needed to get out of there, return to the boarding house, pack her bags, and leave. For anywhere far from this paradise that had revealed itself to be hell. But when she turned to the door, Marcus was there, blocking her exit. "Don't go," he said simply, his voice hoarse with an emotion she couldn't identify. "Get out of my way." She tried to pass him, but Marcus gently but firmly held her arms. "Let me explain." "Explain what? That you're a blackmailer? That you used this place to destroy people's lives? That you killed an innocent woman?" Tears began streaming down her face. "That I'm an idiot who fell in love with a monster?" The word love hung in the air between them like an unintentional confession. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, as if those words were both his salvation and his condemnation. "Keith is right about many things," he admitted, releasing her arms, "but he's wrong about the most important one." "Which one?" "I didn't kill Olivia Adams." He ran his hands through his hair, the familiar gesture now loaded with desperation. "But I couldn't save her." Olivia studied him, looking for signs of lying in his expression. "Tell me the truth, all of it." Marcus walked to the window, looking at the ocean stretching infinitely beyond the resort. When he began to speak, his voice was low, laden with a guilt he had carried for years. "Keith is right about the recording system. My father installed it when he built the resort. He said it was for security, but I discovered the truth after he died. He used the information collected here to expand the business, to secure contracts, to silence competitors." He turned to face her. "When I took control, I tried to dismantle everything, but it was too late. There were commitments, agreements, made with very dangerous people. If I exposed everything, it wouldn't just be my life at risk, but all the resort employees. So you continued with the scheme. I modified it, used it only when necessary to protect what I had built, and never, ever to destroy innocence." He approached her again, "until Olivia Adams discovered everything." "And then?" She was furious. Said she couldn't stay with someone who benefited from corruption and blackmail. She threatened to expose everything publicly. Marcus closed his eyes, reliving painful memories. "I tried to convince her that we could destroy the system together, gradually without putting lives at risk, but she wouldn't listen." "So you silenced her?" "No." The denial came out as a roar. "I loved her. I would never harm her." His voice broke slightly, but other people learned of her intentions. Olivia's blood froze. Keith and other investors who had much to lose if the scheme was exposed. They gave me an ultimatum: control the situation or they would handle it themselves. Marcus rested his hands on the desk, shoulders bowed by the weight of guilt. I tried to protect her. I paid for her to leave the country, to assume a new identity, to start a new life away from all of this. But she never reached the airport. The words came out as a devastated whisper. The car she was in was found on a secondary road, empty. They never found the body. Olivia felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. Keith killed her. I can't prove it, but I'm certain. Marcus looked directly into her eyes. And when you appeared here, with the same name, the same family history, the same characteristics, I thought it was a second chance, an opportunity to do things differently. Or you thought I would be easier to control than she was. The accusation hit him like a slap. Is that really what you think of me? Olivia wanted to believe him, desperately. Wanted to believe that the man she had fallen in love with wasn't the monster Keith had painted. But the evidence was overwhelming. I don't know what to think anymore, she admitted, her voice breaking. I don't know if anything between us was real or if I'm just a piece in your game. It was real. He approached her, taking her face between his hands. Every moment, every touch, every word. You made me remember who I was before all this, who I can still be, but it doesn't change what you did, what you still do. No, he agreed, brutal honesty in his voice. But I can change. I can dismantle all of this if you stay with me. How? I have copies of all the recordings, all the compromising documents. I can turn everything over to the authorities, expose the entire network. But I need time to ensure that innocent employees are protected, that people like Keith can't take revenge. It was a tempting proposal, but Olivia couldn't forget the fate of the first Olivia. And if Keith discovers your plans before you can execute them, that's the risk I have to take. His eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her tremble. The question is, are you willing to take that risk with me? Before she could answer, the office door opened abruptly. Keith entered, followed by two enormous men in black suits whom Olivia recognized as private security guards from the resort. How touching, Keith said, clapping slowly. Marcus was always talented at convincing young women that he was the hero of the story. Keith, this is between us. Marcus positioned himself protectively in front of Olivia. Leave her out of it. Ah, but she's already in it, my dear friend. The moment she started asking the same questions as her predecessor, she became a problem that needs to be solved. She doesn't know anything. She does now. Keith smiled coldly. And frankly, I'm tired of cleaning up your emotional messes, Marcus. First the other Olivia, now this one. You clearly have a type. Olivia felt terror paralyze her muscles. The two security guards approached, and she knew she was facing the same fate that had befallen her predecessor. No, Marcus roared, interposing himself between them and Olivia. If you touch her, I expose everything. Every recording, every document, every crime you've committed. You wouldn't do that, Keith seemed too confident. It would mean your own destruction, too. Yes, I would. Marcus's voice was pure determination, without hesitation. Interesting. Keith studied the two for a moment. Very well, I'll make a different proposal. Olivia held her breath, waiting. You have 48 hours to convince your little girlfriend to keep her mouth shut, to make it clear that she shouldn't follow in the first Olivia's footsteps. If I have any reason to believe she poses a threat to our business. He didn't finish the sentence, but the threat hung in the air like poison. And if she agrees to stay quiet, then she can continue her happy little life here in paradise. She can even marry you, if that will maintain her loyalty. Keith laughed cruelly. But if she tries to be a heroine like the other one, I get the message. Good. Keith turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Oh, Marcus, just so there are no misunderstandings, this time there will be no opportunity for escape to another country. If she becomes a problem, it will be resolved right here, definitively. When the door closed behind them, the silence that followed was deafening. Olivia and Marcus looked at each other, both processing the magnitude of the situation they found themselves in. Now you know, he said finally. This is the truth about me, about this place, about the danger you're in, just by being here. Olivia felt something changing inside her. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was a mixture of terror and determination that she had never experienced before. 48 hours, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. 48 hours for what? To decide if I'm going to run, or if I'm going to fight. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Every noise at Mrs. Martha's boarding house made her jump out of bed. Every shadow that passed by the window seemed like a threat. Keith's words echoed in her mind like a sinister mantra. 48 hours to decide her fate. Running meant abandoning not only Marcus, but also any chance of justice for the first Olivia. Fighting meant risking her own life against men who had already killed once to protect their secrets. When the sun rose over Palm Beach, she had already made a decision. She arrived at the resort determined, but didn't go directly back to the office. Instead, she headed to the Human Resources Department, where she knew the documents of all employees who had ever worked at Helios were archived. If she was going to fight, she needed information. The employee responsible for the archives was in a meeting, and Olivia took advantage to explore the old cabinets. She found Olivia Adams' complete file, address, emergency contact numbers, work history, but it was a handwritten note in the margin that caught her attention. Contact, Dr. Ryan Mitchell, behavioral psychologist in case of emergency. Why would a receptionist have a psychologist as an emergency contact? Olivia photographed the document with her cell phone and quickly left the department. A quick Google search revealed that Dr. Ryan Mitchell maintained a private practice in Miami and was listed as a specialist in trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. 2 hours later, she was in the waiting room of the clinic, observing the walls decorated with diplomas and certificates. When Ryan finally received her, Olivia was surprised. He was a young man, perhaps in his 30s, with kind eyes and a smile that immediately conveyed security. "How can I help you, Olivia?" he asked, consulting the agenda where she had registered with a false name. "Actually, I didn't come for myself. I came because of Olivia Adams." The change in his expression was instantaneous. The smile disappeared, replaced by a tension that left his shoulders rigid. "I don't know what you're talking about. Dr. Mitchell, please, I know she was your patient. I know she disappeared 5 years ago. And I know my life might be in danger for the same reasons as hers." He studied her for a long moment, clearly fighting an internal battle about how much to reveal. "You work at Helios?" "I do. And I look very much like her." "Jesus." Ryan rubbed his face with his hands. "How did you find out about me?" "I found your name in her files as an emergency contact." "And why did you come looking for me?" "Because I need to understand what really happened to her, and because I think you were the only person she completely trusted." Ryan stood up and went to the window, observing the movement of the city below. When he spoke again, his voice was laden with an old guilt. "Olivia started seeing me because she was having nightmares, insomnia, panic attacks. She said she felt like she was being watched all the time, like a rat in a laboratory." He sat back down but avoided Olivia's gaze. "At first I thought they were just symptoms of stress from working in such a competitive environment, but the sessions revealed something much more sinister." The recording scheme. Among other things, she had discovered that the room where she stayed, Marcus had offered accommodations at the resort itself, was being monitored. Everything she did, all the conversations she had, even her most intimate moments were recorded. Olivia felt nauseated. Did Marcus know? That was the question. Olivia believed he did, but she wasn't sure. Marcus said he loved her, that he wanted to protect her, but she had lost trust in everyone at the resort. Ryan paused. "Except me." "You were close." She was an extraordinary woman. Intelligent, brave, determined to do the right thing, even knowing the risks. There was genuine affection in his voice. "And yes, I fell in love with her." The confession hung in the air between them. Did she reciprocate? She began to. "In our last sessions, we talked about the possibility of her leaving the resort, starting a new life, away from Marcus, away from all that toxic environment." His eyes filled with tears. I scheduled an extra session the night before she disappeared. I was going to help her make a formal report to the authorities. We had documents, evidence, everything organized. What happened? She never showed up. I called the resort and they said she had suddenly resigned, that she had left without leaving an address. Ryan stood up again, agitated. But I knew it was a lie. Olivia would never leave without talking to me. She would never abandon the fight. Did you try to investigate? I tried. I hired a private detective, went to the police, even tried to infiltrate someone into the resort to discover the truth. He laughed bitterly. But they have resources and connections that I never had. Eventually, I had to accept that she had gone, or been forced to go, or worse. The silence that followed was loaded with dark possibilities. Finally, Ryan spoke again. Why did you come looking for me? What's your situation there? Olivia told him everything, the encounter with Marcus, the growing attraction, the revelations about the scheme, Keith's threat, the 48-hour ultimatum. Ryan listened in silence, his expression becoming increasingly somber. You need to get out of there immediately. I can't, not without discovering the truth about what happened to her. Olivia, he paused, realizing the irony of calling another woman by the same name. What's your real name? Olivia, too. Olivia Constance Bennett. My God. He stared at her with growing horror. You're her family. Cousins, our grandmothers were sisters. Then it's not a coincidence. None of this is a coincidence. Ryan began pacing nervously around the room. They brought you there on purpose. Who? Keith and the other investors. They know about the family connection. They probably investigated you even before you applied for the internship. He stopped and faced her directly. You're bait. Bait for what? To force Marcus to stay in line. To show that they can replace anyone he loves with a similar version whenever necessary. It's a form of psychological control. The revelation hit Olivia like a punch in the stomach. So nothing that happened between me and Marcus was real. Not necessarily. The feelings can be real even when the circumstances are manipulated. Ryan sat down beside her, his voice becoming gentler, but that doesn't change the fact that you're in mortal danger. So what do you suggest? That we do what Olivia Adams didn't have a chance to do, that we expose everything publicly in a way that they can't silence you like they silenced her. How? Ryan opened a locked drawer in his desk and pulled out a thick folder. I kept all the evidence she had collected, documents, photographs, recordings that she managed to make secretly. It's all here. Olivia looked at the folder as if it were a bomb. Why did you keep all this? Because I knew that one day someone would come looking for the truth. And because I promised her that, if anything happened, I would ensure the guilty wouldn't go unpunished. What do we need to do? First, you need to go back to the resort and act normally. You can't give signs that you've discovered anything new. Ryan opened the folder and showed her some documents. I'll contact some trusted investigative journalists, some police officers who aren't on Helios's payroll. We'll prepare everything for a simultaneous exposure in multiple media. And how long will that take? 48 hours. Olivia smiled for the first time since the conversation with Keith. Exactly the deadline they gave me. There's just one thing you need to decide, Ryan said, gently touching her hand. Marcus, do you trust him enough to include him in our plans? It was the million-dollar question. Olivia thought about the moments of intimacy with Marcus, the vulnerability she had seen in his eyes, the way he had spoken about wanting to redeem himself. But she also thought about the first Olivia, who had trusted the wrong man and paid with her life. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I think I'll find out very soon. When she left Ryan's clinic, Olivia felt different. No longer the naive girl from the countryside who had arrived at Helios weeks ago. She was a woman who had discovered her own power, her own strength, and she was ready to use both to bring justice. Only 36 hours remained until Keith's deadline, and Olivia planned to use every minute to ensure that this time the story would have a different ending. Olivia. returned to the resort with a new perspective on everything around her. Each corridor, each security camera, each employee who politely greeted her now seemed part of an elaborate staging. She was at the center of a game whose rules she didn't completely know, but she was beginning to understand how to play it. Marcus was waiting for her in the office, clearly anxious. There were dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept, and he was holding a cup of coffee that he seemed not to have touched. "Where have you been?" he asked as soon as she entered. "I've been looking for you all morning." "I went out to think," she replied, keeping her voice neutral. "About our conversation yesterday. And did you reach any conclusion?" Olivia approached him slowly, studying his expression. For a moment she allowed herself to see just the man, not the boss, not the heir to a corrupt empire, just Marcus. She saw the fear in his eyes, the vulnerability he tried to hide, the genuine love that shone when he looked at her. "Yes," she said finally. "I did." "Which one?" Instead of answering with words, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a gentle or hesitant kiss. It was intense, desperate, loaded with all the conflicting emotions she felt: love, fear, anger, determination. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. "Olivia," he whispered, touching her face as if he couldn't believe she was still there. "I love you," she said, and the words came out with a brutal honesty. "Against all logic, against every instinct of self-preservation, I fell in love with you. With the man you are when you don't have to be the CEO, when you don't have to carry the weight of your father's sins." His eyes filled with tears. "And is that enough? Knowing everything you know about me, about this place?" "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I know I won't run away like the first Olivia tried to do. I'll stay and fight by your side. It could be too dangerous." "It's already dangerous. Keith made that clear yesterday." She held his face between her hands. "But if we're going to face this, we'll face it together, with complete honesty between us." "Honesty," he repeated, as if it were a foreign word. "Yes, I need you to show me everything, the files, the recordings, the complete system. I need to understand exactly how everything works if we're going to find a way to dismantle it without getting ourselves killed in the process." Marcus hesitated for a long moment. "If I show this to you, there will be no turning back. Keith won't allow someone with that knowledge to simply walk away." "He won't allow that anyway." Olivia smiled with a confidence that surprised even herself. "The question is, are we going to be victims or are we going to take control of the situation?" Something changed in Marcus's expression. The hopelessness gave way to something more like hope, and he nodded slowly. "Very well, but not here. There are too many ears in this office." He looked at the clock. "Tonight, after 11, when the resort is empty, I'll take you to the operations center." "Where is it?" "In the basement, the part of the resort that guests never see." The rest of the day passed in an almost unbearable tension. Olivia tried to maintain a normal routine, but constantly felt Keith's eyes on her. He appeared twice in the office during the day, always with some administrative excuse, but clearly checking if she was still there, if she was still behaving. "How is our young friend?" he asked on the second visit, addressing Marcus but looking directly at Olivia. "Well," Marcus replied dryly, "adapting to the realities of her new position." "Great. I hope she's more flexible than her predecessor." Keith smiled at Olivia. "See you tomorrow, dear. I'm sure it will be an interesting day." When he left, Olivia felt a shiver. Only 18 hours remained until the deadline expired. At 11:15 at night, Marcus met her in the resort parking lot. He guided her through a side entrance she had never noticed before, down a concrete staircase that led to the underground levels of the complex. The air down there was colder, laden with humidity and something that smelled of electronic equipment. "My father built this as a bunker," Marcus explained as they walked through corridors illuminated by fluorescent lights. "During the Cold War, many wealthy businessmen feared for their own safety. He wanted a place where he could hide if necessary." They stopped in front of a reinforced door that Marcus opened with a complex combination of passwords and biometric recognition. What Olivia saw on the other side left her speechless. It was an operations center worthy of a spy movie. Dozens of monitors showed live images from every corner of the resort: rooms, corridors, common areas, even bathrooms. Powerful servers hummed in organized racks, and physical files occupied shelves that went from floor to ceiling. "My God," she whispered. "Every conversation, every movement, every intimate moment of every guest is recorded here," Marcus said, his voice laden with disgust. "We have compromising material on senators, representatives, ministers, judges, businessmen. Enough information to bring down the government." Olivia approached one of the monitors and saw the presidential suite, where a politician she recognized from the news was talking with a woman who was definitely not his wife. "And you use this how?" "Subtle blackmail. Never direct threats, but influence, a contract here, an approval there, a competitor who loses an important bid." Marcus showed her some folders. "Keith coordinates most of this. I try to minimize the damage, but it's still complicity." "Yes," he didn't try to justify himself. "It's complicity." Olivia spent the next hour exploring the system, with Marcus explaining how everything worked. It was frighteningly sophisticated. The recordings were automatically categorized by facial and voice recognition, transcriptions were generated by artificial intelligence, and an algorithm automatically identified conversations that might contain valuable information. "How do we destroy this?" she finally asked. "We can't simply destroy it. There are copies on international servers, and Keith has independent access to everything." Marcus leaned against one of the walls. "The only way is to expose everything simultaneously, in a way so public that they can't silence all those involved. Journalists. Multiple journalists in multiple countries with irrefutable evidence." He looked at her. "But who would do that? Who would be brave enough to oppose people with so much power?" Olivia smiled. It was time to play her cards. "I know someone." And she told him about Ryan, about the evidence that the first Olivia had collected, about the plan they had begun to elaborate. Marcus listened in silence, his expression changing from surprise to admiration, and finally to something that looked like hope. "He really kept everything?" "Everything. And he has contacts in investigative media and federal law enforcement. But we'll need more than the old evidence. We'll need something current, irrefutable." Olivia looked around the room full of equipment. "What if we copied everything? The entire system, all the recordings, all the files?" "It would be impossible. It's petabytes of information, and any attempt at a mass download would be detected immediately." "Then we don't download. We do something better." "What?" "We broadcast live, to the entire world." Marcus stared at her as if she had gone mad. "How?" "Your security system is connected to the internet, right? To allow remote access." "Yes, but then we can hack the system itself from the inside, broadcast the images live to multiple platforms simultaneously, not just the old recordings, but what's happening now, in real time." The idea was too audacious to work, or maybe it was too audacious to fail. "It would require physical access to the main server," Marcus said slowly, considering the possibilities. "Which you have. And advanced technical knowledge to configure the transmission without being detected. Which Ryan can get. He has contacts at the university, activist hackers. And perfect timing to ensure maximum exposure." Olivia checked the time. "We have 16 hours. Keith expects an answer by 5 in the afternoon tomorrow. Then we do it at 5:15. They looked at each other for a long moment, both processing the magnitude of what they were planning. It was dangerous, almost suicidal, but it was also the only chance to break the cycle that had destroyed so many lives. "If we do this," Marcus finally said, "there's no going back. Keith and the others will want to kill us. Then we have to ensure they don't have a chance." Olivia approached him, taking his hands. "Are you with me?" "To the end," he promised. And when they kissed again, there in the heart of the operation they had decided to destroy, Olivia knew she had finally found something worth fighting for. Not just justice for the first Olivia, but a future where she and Marcus could be together, without carrying the weight of the sins of the past. Now it was just a matter of surviving the next 16 hours. The morning of the last day arrived charged, with an electric tension that seemed to hover over the entire resort. Olivia woke before her alarm, her heart already racing with adrenaline from what was to come. She had spent the early hours communicating with Ryan through encrypted messages, coordinating every detail of the plan they had named Operation Transparency. Ryan had made contact with an activist, hacker known as Phantom, who specialized in exposing corporate corruption. 3 investigative journalists from different outlets were already on standby, and a federal agent Ryan knew from college had promised a simultaneous operation to protect the witnesses. The plan was simple in concept but devastatingly complex in execution. At 5 o'clock, exactly when Keith expected Olivia's answer, Phantom would infiltrate Helios's security system through a back door that Marcus would create. From there, all the compromising recordings would be transmitted live to multiple platforms, while journalists simultaneously published the documentary evidence collected by the first Olivia. During breakfast in the staff cafeteria, Olivia noticed that some of Keith's security guards were watching her more closely than usual. Conversations stopped when she passed by, and there was a tension in the air that even the most inattentive employees could perceive. "Are you all right, honey?" Mary Jo asked when they met in the hallway. "You look strange today." "Just nervous." "Today is an important day," Olivia replied, trying to sound casual. "For all of us," Mary Jo said, and there was something in her tone that made Olivia look more carefully. "I hope things change around here, for the better." There was too much knowledge in those words. Olivia realized that it wasn't just she and Marcus who were tired of the secrets and corruption. The entire resort was ready for a change. At 10 in the morning, Marcus called a meeting with all departments. Officially, it was about process optimization, but Olivia noticed that he was positioning key people in strategic locations, ensuring that loyal employees were in security positions when everything exploded. Keith appeared shortly before noon, accompanied by his 2 usual security guards. There was something different about his posture, more alert, more predatory. "Marcus, I need to talk to you," he said, but his eyes were fixed on Olivia. "And with your protégé, too." They met in the conference room, the same one where Keith had revealed the first truths about the blackmail system. The irony wasn't lost on Olivia. "Well, the moment of truth has arrived," Keith said, lighting a Cuban cigar. "Has our young friend made a decision?" Olivia looked at Marcus, who nodded. Almost imperceptibly, it was time for the performance of their lives. "I have," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm staying." "Excellent." Keith smiled but didn't lower his guard. "And you understand the conditions of that decision?" "I understand. I keep silent about everything I've seen and heard. I continue working normally, and I never ever question how business is conducted here." "Very wise. And what about you, Marcus? Has your little girlfriend understood the realities of life?" "Perfectly," Marcus replied. "She's smarter than the first Olivia. She knows when it's time to choose survival over idealism." The words hurt Olivia, even knowing they were theatre. There was too much truth in them, echoes of the real fears they both carried. "Good. Then we can consider this matter closed." Keith stood up but paused at the door. "Oh, just one thing. I hope you understand that my generosity has limits. If there's any sign, any indication that our young friend has changed her mind—" "There won't be," Marcus assured him. "For both your sakes, I hope you're right." When Keith left, Olivia and Marcus looked at each other for a long moment. In a few hours, their lives would change forever, for better or for much, much worse. At 3:30, Marcus went down to the operations center under the pretext of doing routine maintenance. Olivia remained in the office, maintaining the facade of normality, while discreetly monitoring Ryan's messages. "Phantom is positioned. Journalists are ready. FBI has assembled a protection team. All set for 5 p.m., came the message at 4:15. At 4:40, Marcus sent an encoded message. "System open. Backdoor active, awaiting signal." Olivia looked out the office window. The sun was beginning to set over the ocean, painting the sky in orange hues that contrasted with the deep blue of the sea. It was a beautiful, almost peaceful view, that didn't match at all the storm that was about to descend on Helios. At 4:55, Keith appeared at the office door. "5 minutes," he said simply. "I hope there won't be any unpleasant surprises." "There won't be," Olivia responded, forcing a smile. Keith moved away but didn't go far. He positioned himself outside the office, clearly waiting for the deadline to officially expire before whatever he was planning to do. 5 o'clock. Olivia's phone vibrated with a message from Ryan. "Starting transmission. God protect us." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Olivia began to fear that something had gone wrong, that Keith had discovered the plan, that everything would collapse before it even began. Then the alarm sounded. Not the fire alarm or medical emergency alarm. It was a sound that Olivia had never heard before, sharp, penetrating, echoing throughout the resort, like the wail of a wounded animal. Keith ran into the office, his face pale. "What the hell is that?" Before anyone could answer, all the televisions in the resort lit up simultaneously. The screens that normally showed information about activities and services now displayed something very different. Live images from guests' rooms, intimate conversations being recorded without knowledge, secret meetings between politicians and businessmen, illegal deals being closed in luxury suites, and above it all in large capital letters flashing on the screen, Helios Resort, Blackmail and Espionage Center, live transmission. "You bitch!" Keith roared, spinning to face Olivia. "You did this!" But before he could reach her, Marcus's voice echoed through the resort's sound system. "Attention guests and employees of Helios. My name is Marcus Blackwood, and I have a confession to make. For 5 years, this resort has served as a base for a blackmail and extortion scheme that has corrupted politicians, businessmen, and authorities throughout the country. Today that ends." Keith pulled out a gun, a small but deadly pistol, and pointed it at Olivia. "You're going to shut this down now, or—" The office door exploded. FBI agents burst into the room, weapons drawn, shouting orders for Keith to drop the pistol. The German hesitated for a fraction of a second, time enough for Olivia to throw herself behind the desk. The shot echoed through the office like thunder. But it wasn't Keith who fired. One of the agents, seeing the direct threat to the witness, didn't hesitate to neutralize the danger. Keith fell heavily, the pistol sliding across the marble floor. Blood was spreading beneath his body, and his blue eyes stared at the ceiling with the emptiness of death. "Target neutralized," the agent spoke into the radio. "Witness protected." Olivia emerged from behind the desk with trembling legs, looking at the body of the man who had orchestrated so much suffering. She felt a mixture of relief, horror, and a dark satisfaction that frightened her. On the televisions around the resort, the transmission continued. Well-known politicians appeared in compromising situations. Businessmen discussed bribes as if they were restaurant menus. Judges negotiated sentences like merchandise. It was the biggest corruption scandal in recent American history, unfolding live, transmitted directly from the luxury rooms where the crimes had been committed. "Olivia!" Marcus appeared at the door, breathless from having run up from the basement. Seeing Keith on the floor and the FBI agents in control of the situation, his shoulders relaxed for the first time in years. She ran into his arms, and they embraced in the midst of the chaos, at the center of the storm they had created to free themselves. "It's over," he whispered in her ear. "Finally over." But Olivia knew it wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. Now came the interrogations, the trials, the reconstruction of everything that had been corrupted. But for the first time since she had arrived at Helios, she wasn't afraid of the future. She had Marcus by her side. She had the truth as a weapon, and she had the certainty that she had done the right thing. The first Olivia had been silenced before she could speak. This Olivia had found a way to make her voice echo across the entire country, and Keith Weber would never be able to silence anyone again. 6 months later, Olivia stood on the balcony of the apartment she shared with Marcus in Miami, watching the sunrise over Biscayne Bay. The city was slowly awakening below them, and she could hear the familiar sounds of the morning market, children walking to school, normal life following its natural course. Normal. It was a word that had gained new meaning after everything they had been through. The Helios scandal had dominated the headlines for weeks. Dozens of politicians had resigned, businessmen were arrested, and a federal investigation had discovered ramifications of the blackmail scheme extending to 3 countries. Marcus had testified in more than 50 hearings, providing details about years of systemic corruption. The resort was closed, its assets frozen by the courts. But Marcus didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was free. Free from the weight of family expectations, free from his father's sins, free to be just a man in love trying to build something new. "Breakfast is ready," he said, appearing on the balcony with 2 steaming cups. He wore just a t-shirt and shorts, his hair disheveled from sleep, and Olivia still felt her heart race every time she saw him like this, relaxed, natural, hers. "Thank you." She accepted the cup, and they nestled together in the rocking chair. They had bought at an antique fair. It was made of simple wood, nothing compared to the luxury of Helios, but it was theirs. "Ryan called last night. The trial of the last defendants is scheduled for next month. Will we have to testify again?" "Probably, but it will be the last one, he promises." Olivia smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "After that, we can focus on the future." The future. They talked about it almost daily now, making plans like any normal couple. Marcus had used the resources he had managed to save from the judicial freezing to set up a small ethical hospitality consulting firm, helping establishments implement sustainable and transparent practices. Olivia had completed her degree and now worked as a coordinator for a social project that offered professional training for young people from underprivileged communities. It was a simpler life than they could have had, but it was honest. And after everything they had been through, honesty was worth more than all the luxury in the world. "There's something I need to tell you," Marcus said, his voice carrying a familiar hesitation. Even after months together, he still struggled to break the habit of keeping secrets. "You can tell me. Ryan contacted me yesterday. They found the first Olivia's body." Olivia's heart stopped for a moment. They knew this day would eventually come, but that didn't make the news any less impactful. "And where?" "On a rural property that belonged to Keith, buried for 5 years. His voice became softer. "Ryan said she will be buried with dignity, that she will finally have peace." Olivia closed her eyes, thinking of the brave woman who had paved the way for the truth to be exposed. She deserved to live. She deserved to see justice being done. "She did," Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. "Through you. You finished what she started." It was true in a way. The first, Olivia had collected the evidence, had tried to fight against the system. The second, Olivia had found a way to make her voice heard throughout the country. Together they had brought down an empire of corruption. "Sometimes I wonder," Olivia murmured, "if all this was really destiny or just a terrible coincidence." "Does it matter? You were in the right place at the right time, with the right courage to make a difference." Marcus turned her so he could look into her eyes. "And I was lucky enough to fall in love with the right woman to save me from myself." "We saved each other," she corrected. "Together." He smiled, the genuine and devastating smile that still made her legs weak. "Together," he agreed. The phone rang inside the apartment, interrupting the intimate moment. Marcus went to answer. Returning a few minutes later with a curious expression. "That was Mary Jo," he said. "She and some other former Helios employees are setting up a community tourism cooperative in Palm Beach. They want to know if we'd like to invest." "Invest?" "Not money. Knowledge, experience, consulting." He sat beside her again. "It would be a way to transform all that horrible experience into something positive." Olivia considered the proposal. The idea of returning to Palm Beach, of setting foot in those places where everything had begun, still frightened her a little. But perhaps it was exactly what they needed, a chance to redefine those spaces, to create something beautiful where Once there had been so much darkness. I would love to, she said finally. Are you sure? It won't be easy to go back there. I'm sure, and you're right, it's time to transform all that pain into something that can help other people. They sat in silence for a few minutes, rocking gently in the chair, watching the city awaken. It was a comfortable silence, full of possibilities and unspoken promises. Olivia, Marcus said finally, his voice more serious. Marry me. She pulled away to look at him, surprised not by the words but by the timing. What? I know it's early. I know we're still dealing with all the chaos of the trials and rebuilding our lives, but I also know that I don't want to spend a single day without you. He held her hands. I don't have an expensive ring, I can't offer a fairy tale wedding, but I can offer my total honesty, my unconditional love, and the promise that we'll face whatever comes together. Tears began streaming down Olivia's face. Marcus, I know I'm a risky bet. Ex-heir to a criminal empire, accomplice to corruption schemes, a man with a past that will haunt us forever. He caressed her face. But I swear by everything sacred that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your love. You already are, she whispered, her heart overflowing with a happiness she thought she could never feel. You always were from the first day. I just needed time to see beyond the masks we all wore. Is that a yes? In response, she kissed him. It was a kiss full of promises, of hope, of a love that had survived the worst tests and emerged stronger on the other side. When they separated, Marcus was smiling like a boy who had just received the best Christmas present of his life. So it's yes, she confirmed, laughing through the tears. Yes to the marriage, yes to Palm Beach, yes to everything that comes, as long as it's together. Always together, he promised, sealing the agreement with another kiss. On that golden morning in Miami, with the sun rising over the bay and the city awakening to a new day, Olivia knew she had finally found her place in the world. It wasn't in the luxury of Helios, it wasn't in the security of the life she had planned in the countryside. It was in the arms of the man who had learned to love completely, flaws and virtues included. They had begun their story in the cold corridors of a luxury resort, surrounded by lies and dangers. But they were ending, or rather beginning again, on a simple balcony bathed in the honest light of dawn, with the future stretching before them like a blank page waiting to be written. The first Olivia had died trying to expose the truth. The second Olivia had lived to see it triumph, and now finally